surface very similar to the last, as it is another Christmas type of massacre. But believe me, they are extremely different. These stories that I'd happened to find all were so intense with everything that had happened, such big scale type of murders or crimes, that it really surprised me to know that all of these things happen. But I do know that they say that, depression and the suicide rate goes up during the holidays, but from what I found, that's actually not true. But any sort of stress that people feel in their day-to-day lives definitely gets amplified for the holidays. There's just so much pressure, and this story definitely exhibits that intensely. Is this motivating you guys to really enjoy the holidays and give in to the Christmas spirit? No, probably not. But don't worry, these are just crimes to scratch that Christmas itch. Or I don't know what I'm saying, but I think that you will definitely find tonight's story an interesting one. That is for sure, as it definitely blew me away. So let's dive into things here. Let's get ourselves nice and comfortable for maybe a midday's nap, or while in the bed crocheting. I myself knitted almost every gift I had this year, so power to you. Or tune in and listen while writing your doctoral thesis. Grab some milk and double chocolate chips cookies, or join me in a glass of wine, which tonight I am having some of my homemade wine once again. My neighbor and I made labels, and they're a joke. And let's get ready to dive into the story of Aziz Yazdanpanah's Christmas Day massacre. Now, I do apologize if I say that last name wrong. I really couldn't find much on this story where people were speaking his name. It was usually the Santa massacre, or just Aziz. So I tried my best, but let's dive into things. Now, if you tuned into last week's video, you would see that I decorated everything. I got even a festive holiday cup, and with my bad luck with any sort of drinking apparatus, I put it in the dishwasher, and this happened to it. My nice wine glass became a weird Whoville style one, so I'm keeping it that way. It's a thing now. It just seems more me, but it's very weird. Alright, you guys, cheers. Okay, so I have never really done a story like this before, which is kind of surprising. And when I was researching it, I really realized that, because you guys know I don't like unsolveds. I'll do them. I don't like them though, because I need to know there was a resolution. I prefer to tell stories where the justice system actually does their job. Obviously, that's not every video I've done, unfortunately, but I don't think I've ever had a story with this type of ending before, and it is heartbreaking. So, warning that it is pretty devastating, especially for the season. So, the story starts in 2011 on Christmas Day, which was a Sunday that year. This took place in a community called Grapevine, Texas, and at the time the population was roughly 46,000 people, and it is about 20 miles northwest and unsure of what the caller had said. And I believe afterwards, when they'd hung up and they tried to phone it back, they decided to just send both, as they had no clue what they were about to walk into that morning. So the police had arrived to a 2500 block of Hall Johnson Road, an apartment belonging to 55-year-old Fatima Ramadi. Now, again, I couldn't really find many clips where they were saying their names. It could be Fatima or Fatima. Based on the spelling, I'm really unsure, but I'm going to say Fatima, but it could be Fatima. I'm not sure. I've had two people in my life, same spelling, different pronunciation, so, take that with a grain of salt. So, Fatima was the estranged wife of Aziz Yazdanpanah, who was a 56-year-old Iranian-born father of two with Fatima. Their children were their 14-year-old son, Ali, and their 19-year-old daughter, Nona. Now, Aziz was a real estate agent whom had been struggling very badly financially. He was kind of losing control of his life, and very quickly. He could not provide for his family, his home, and reportedly had been unemployed for 12 years. That is a very intense amount of time to have off, not working, and being stressed out money-wise. So you can only imagine the strain that had had on the family. So his wife and himself were also struggling in their relationship. Fatima was a fairly private person herself, very respectful woman, and kept a lot of her personal life, her personal affairs to herself. She really didn't complain much about her marriage to outsiders. She worked 2 jobs to provide for her family, both in spas, and she had only ever once really reached out to a coworker to kind of vent her stresses out, and it had been someone that she had worked with for a long period of time. And she was not known for venting out her frustrations like this, but what she had said was that Aziz and her were having difficulties, and that it was hard for her because he was not providing for his family the way that it was expected of his Muslim responsibility. So this ended up being what people at a surface level believed to be why they'd eventually ended up separating. And Fatima was looking into filing for divorce. She'd been putting up with a lot for a very long time. So there were other reasons. Fatima was not just frustrated that he was lazy. There were other reasons that the relationship was breaking down. And although he was known by friends and family as being very friendly, very generous, loving man to his children and family, so loving that he'd purchased a gun because he was having some issues and run-ins with his daughter's boyfriend, like very difficult issues was. So they took his family away from him. So at this point, we're getting to around December and Christmas festivities. So there was a Christmas Eve party hosted by his sister and brother-in-law, and he was not invited to this event. And people speculated that he was furious about this, but he was invited to the following day Christmas festivities with the family. But he was originally planning full well on attending this Christmas Eve party, told he was not allowed to come, and people believe that this is what made him kind of snap. And his brother-in-law Muhammad owned a very popular Dallas, Texas ranch, and he was very well known in the Iranian American community. And the party hosted was at this ranch, so it was, banging. There was a lot of people there, a big gathering. So Aziz was just blindsided and very, very noticeably angry that he was not invited. But despite his anger, the next day, Christmas seemed to start off and play off like a normal, regular, festivus day with, all of your regular activities to commence the beginning. So, Christmas Day, he arrives at his estranged wife's apartments, where he had came in the morning dressed up as Santa. Probably a red Santa, not this Elvis blue Christmas thing I have going on. But he was appeared to be trying to do something nice. There was no tense moments throughout the events that we know of, and he appeared to be doing something nice for his family. So when he'd actually gotten there, he was the fourth to arrive. So his wife and 2 children were inside. He was the fourth, and afterwards his sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and their daughter had followed. So it was around 11:16 that the daughter of his sister-in-law had actually sent a text to her boyfriend about Aziz, saying that she was disappointed her uncle was there, essentially, and kind of making fun of how he was dressed as Santa, saying, oh great, now he wants to be all fatherly and win Father of the Year because he messed up beforehand. So, what we know of at 11:16, based off of this text message, is everyone in the home thought everything was fine. If anything, they were rolling their eyes at, the family drama, right? So, unknowing to everyone in the home was that Aziz had brought 2 handguns with him, most likely concealed in his Santa costume. He did have a history with the police, but couldn't find exactly anything other than things we'll discuss later, taxes and that type of thing. But shortly after that text message, the invited, totally welcomed guest had caught his victims by surprise. He had seemingly killed everyone in the home, one by one, without ever having to reload his weapon. He then had appeared to make a phone call, and that is where we are now. So, officers responding to the call had entered the apartment, unsure what they were going to see exactly, especially since they did not know what the caller was saying until days later. And when they'd entered, they had seen 7 bodies sprawled out amongst open presents and wrapping paper on the living room floor. The television was left on, and one of the victims was still in their pajamas. Which is, I mean, the picture of Christmas, right? You're dressed up, you're still in your pajamas because you're excited, and yeah. So, all had been shot at the least once in the head. One of the weapons was actually found in the hands of Mohammed, but it was very clearly planted there to seemingly look like he had been the one that had started the shootings. Based on the caller who claimed to have done the shootings, and based on where the phone was in the home, on Tuesday after Christmas, they had stated that it was clear that Aziz had killed the family members in the home, and then, based on what they'd analyzed from the phone call, had become overwhelmed by what he had done and decided to take his own life after. It all took place over roughly a span of 15 minutes, so very quickly, and catching all of the relatives off guard. The two handguns, one had a capacity for 15 rounds and the other with 10, were found near the bodies, and it was unclear as to how many shots were actually fired, but since these were brought into the apartment, it was clear that this was a premeditated event, and that the person's mind had been made before he entered the home. One bullet was left in each gun, a Smith & Wesson 9mm and a Glock 23. Police said that it appeared some of the victims tried to throw their arms up in an attempt to shield themselves from the bullets, and some of the victims, it's not named, were hit several times. Honestly, I can't imagine as a wife, as a daughter, as an in-law, to have to, what appeared based on when they determined the time of deaths, based and a measurement of that text message seconds from when he just pulled out the weapons and started killing people. I can't imagine being the last few to survive while it was happening and witnessing this. What could be going through their heads? But they were very caught off guard, so I mean, they probably didn't have much time to think about it, but the pajama part and the TV still on in the background really got me when I was looking it up. explanation for irrational behavior, which I think he said that quite well. I didn't say it out loud, but okay. Now I know I mentioned that the gun was in the in-laws' hand and that it was based on where the phone was, that they could easily tell it was Aziz, but it was actually the wounds that had made this evident as well, as everyone except for Aziz had clearly been shot by someone else, while his wounds were self-inflicted. So, family friends were obviously devastated and furious at these events, talking about how Fatima would do anything, worked 2 jobs to provide for the family, and how Aziz just did nothing but complain. So the fact that he could do this was crazy to them. And according to federal court records, Aziz was placed on a 3-year probation in 1996 after pleading guilty to 1 count of subscribing to false income tax return, and was also fined $1,000, which isn't much, but he did and was required to pay $30,000 in restitution to the U.S. Department of Justice. And this was 3 years before him and his wife had filed jointly for bankruptcy. And the case was then discharged months afterwards. But, in summary, despite the petty financial troubles that they had, marital affairs, because people do terrible things. I mean, if there's anything this channel has shown me, people can do terrible things. But it was Aziz, ultimately, who made the decision to take his family's lives, and then his own shortly after. So who knows really what was going on in his mind at that time, because the reviews are very 50-50. Some people thought he was this amazing guy, can't believe he'd ever do this. Some people thought they saw something in him that was wrong, but consistently everyone doesn't understand why this had happened. But Dr. Ali Ramadi saw the headlines of these events on TV while living in London, England, and he was actually Fatima's brother. So he'd actually spoke with the family that morning, and Ali had actually fronted his sister money. He was the one that helped her get a little financial gain so that she could move into her own apartment. And even after the move, he had thought at least that things were seemingly starting to get better, which kind of just makes things even more confusing. The children who were doing terribly in school when the couple was together was thriving once again. And Aziz himself had actually had a key to Fatima's home where he would enter to hang out with the children often. So it's, I mean, a lot of people think that it was because he just couldn't stand that they didn't need him, but he was still actively involved in their lives on a frequent basis. Ali himself, the brother, had said that he was watching this all on TV play out, no names at the time, but knowing that there was a big possibility based on the location that this could be his family members that were in this incident, and unfortunately he was right. But despite all of this and how devastating that would be, Ali actually says that although he is devastated, he has no hatred for his brother-in-law who had done this to his sisters. He instead just keep moving on. You don't need to, it's okay. I know gun laws are very, very, everybody has a different opinion. We don't need to make the comment section about that. It really is about what happened here. And I know in my last video, I poked a lot of fun. I did at the murderers, because it was such a different crime. It was stranger on stranger murders, addicts who were doing it and thought it was fun. So I might have been a little harsh on them at some points. They were harsher with what they had done. But all of which, each story is disgusting. And in this scenario, another massacre really is so much more intense because the motives and their differences are quite substantial, but it's crazy seeing what someone can do to their own families, but also to strangers as well. And I mean, like one of our commenters had stated, they remember this happening, the events from a previous video happening, and being afraid to leave their own homes in Dayton. And that was because people were terrorizing the area, terrifying people, harming people for literally no reason. But in this video, you have to be afraid of your own family. So Dayton, you stay home to avoid strangers. But in this scenario in Grapeville, home isn't even necessarily safe at all. So it's a pretty intense contrast. Trust no one. Happy holidays. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So yeah, like I said in my last video, you know, you always talk about such heavy topics and then after it's what you think. And it's such a segue. But what did you think of today's story? Had you heard it before? I had not. It's pretty crazy. Like I said, your